Hey, what's up, everybody? Here for another interview with lead pastor of Calvary State College, Dan Nold, a good friend, an old friend. You're not old, but we're
I'm kind of old.
we okay, we're old. Um, hey, I thanks so much for joining us, Dan, and for
Yeah,
taking some time to do this. I really appreciate it. And I think you're the interesting angle that you bring to this whole thing and the conversation is that you're somebody who uh, had this virus, and you're a pastor leading a church very similar to our church, actually. And so, I would just love to hear your perspective a little bit about the disease itself. I think that'll be informative to people, but also,
yeah,
what's God teaching you kind of through it, and we may even delve into some church stuff later.
yeah.
But why don't you just talk about so your living situation right now? It's you and Lynn. Is that just the two of you in the space right now?
Yeah, we've been empty nesters for a while, and actually a year ago, I think yesterday, our church owns about 100 acres, kind of going up the hill, looking out over the valley of State College, Mount Nittany, and Beaver Stadium, and stuff like that. And we just moved into, kind of redid and moved into a small cabin on that property. So if you have to be quarantined somewhere,
Yeah.
honestly, this is the place.
Yeah, man, I've seen it up there, seen the view from up there from your
Yeah.
apartment. You might have the best view in Central
Oh,
PA. Yeah,
yeah. It's beautiful.
yeah, it's cool. So, how's this quarantine thing going for you? Are you introvert, extrovert? How are you dealing with all of the alone time?
Yeah. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not totally extroverted or totally introverted. I uh, and I know you're kind of experiencing the same thing, but the reality is I feel like I'm living on Zoom and probably talking to
Yeah,
people more often in the last 2 weeks, even in the midst of having, the COVID crud, talking to more people than ever.
yeah,
I mean, there's times where you just get zoomed out, and
right.
but I mean, in so many different ways, that's been good too. So, uh, yeah, I would say both Lynn and I are kind of, in between introvert, extrovert. So it hasn't been bad, and our people fix is coming electronically, virtually, and that's okay.
Yeah,
See a few people. We've had so many people especially in the midst of being sick. So many people would come and drop off food. It was kind of like, we're going to drop off the food and get the hell out of there,
right.
and so we've
uh,
seen people from afar, but enough. It's been good.
Yeah, well, especially having had the thing. I mean, so
Yeah,
so you got this in early March. Can you just talk about just give us some details about like where you
yeah,
got it, where kind of where if you can kind of pinpoint back as to what were the
yeah.
circumstances around that, and then tell us a little bit about what it was like to kind of
Yeah.
walk through the sickness.
So I do a little bit of strategic planning, kind of consulting for organizations, and I was doing a StratOps consulting deal, for a missions organization out in Portland, Oregon area. Actually, a couple weeks before that, we'd gone to Myanmar, and we almost canceled. Myanmar, they didn't have any cases, or so they said, but you just, they're neighboring China. And we thought, and we ended up going, got nothing there,
Right.
and then went to do this StratOps deal in Portland. Ironically, with a group of doctors, it's a medical mission to
Oh,
Haiti,
jeez.
and but one of the guys, I didn't know it then, but found out about a week later, I guess, or maybe even a week and a half later. One of the guys there was sick the first 2 days of the deal. He didn't come on the third day. Nothing major. Didn't have even a fever. It was, headaches and aches and cough, I think. But then a few days after I left, I was there a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and left to come back on a Tuesday, I think, like the 8th or 9th of March, whatever that was. And he got tested a few days later and found out he was positive. Um, I got symptoms started about a week, um, almost exactly a week after the last time that I was with him, and for me, the only thing I didn't really have was too much of the shortness of breath, a little bit of it, but not, not the duct tape burning kind
Hmm.
of feeling like I can't breathe. It was more of a breathe deep, and it hurt a little bit and have to cough. But mostly for me, it was fever, aches, chills, some cough, and just a lot of fatigue. No appetite. I lost 14 or 15 pounds. I'm hoping I keep
Wow,
that off at least.
that's a positive
Um,
byproduct.
and so I went into the doctor. I had actually a physical already set up, and I went into the doctor and told him what I had, and he said, "Well, we're going to test you for the flu stuff, and we'll take an extra." They poke a thing up your nose all the way back to your brain, I think,
Right.
and we'll take an extra one of those. If the flu comes up negative, we'll test for the COVID. And so flu came back negative. They tested for the COVID, and then about 4 days later, which was also a Sunday, so I'd had the symptoms for about a week. But 4 days later, I found out that I was COVID positive.
Mm.
Actually, the next day, Monday, was my worst day of the whole time,
Mm.
and it was. I don't know. I can't. I'm a fairly healthy guy, but I can't remember the last time. I felt that sick. Just couldn't get out of bed, and
Really?
but after that, things kind of turned a corner. I ended up having symptoms for 2 weeks basically.
Wow.
But that one Monday, kind of right in the middle, was by far the worst day.
And
And
what made it so bad? Was it just the
I
achiness, the
just
pain, the head,
yeah,
the
it was
chest? What?
everything. I mean, I still didn't have really bad breathing, but it was just I felt terrible and nauseous and no strength. I mean, laid in bed basically all day, headache, cough. I mean, just the whole works. It was just the same symptoms that I had, but it was just more intense
Wow.
um, on that day. Actually, I mean, Lynn, my wife, was praying for me the whole time, but that night before I went to sleep, I just said, I just really need you to pray over me, and
Mm.
she came into the bedroom and prayed over me, and the next day was better,
Wow.
and it just kind of started getting better from there.
So you weren't hospitalized at all as a result of the
No,
sickness? Yeah.
no, I mean, the main thing, at least they said to me, I had people from PA Health Department and CDC and doctors calling, nurses calling to check in and say, "How you doing? What's going on?" They've been really good. But basically, they said the main thing is, if you have an uncontrollable fever or the breathing just gets really bad, that's the only way that we'll hospitalize you. Otherwise, stay home and get better. And the breathing part for me never
Mm.
hit that corner. One of the things, and I'm not, I'm a pretty non-anxious guy, but I think one of the things, you dealt with is just there's so many stories of, 1 minute, a little bit hard to breathe, next minute you're in the hospital. And I think
Yeah.
that was always just a little bit, kind
Yeah.
of in the background, um,
Mm.
but made it through, you know.
Yeah. Just talking about it is making me
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
I need to wipe my
The,
screen here.
the hardest part of all of this is, don't touch your face. I mean, who can do
Right.
that? I'm
I know.
always touching my face.
I feel like the grossest human being in the world
Yeah,
because I'm like
right.
I'm like, what am I doing to my face all the
Yeah,
time?
I'm watching myself on Zoom, and we're talking about
Right.
COVID, and all of a sudden
Right.
I'm like
You're
this.
just,
And
I know, right, and stuff. Oh yeah. So you became kind of a local legend there in State
yeah,
College. You're more popular than Joe Paterno's widow
yeah,
in the newspaper. Just talk about what maybe some learnings or some
yeah,
opportunities that kind of came out of this for you.
yeah. Well, I mean, there was an interview, kind of a web-based news site, and they did an interview with me, kind of in the midst of the sickness, and I talked to the guy who did that yesterday, and I think it had hit like 30,000 page views, which for us here in State College is a decent amount, about 4 times as many as the article that he did with Sue Paterno. So
Right.
that's been kind of interesting. And
Wow.
one of the things that I shared, just in terms of learnings and stuff like that, I don't know. I mean, there's been a couple of things that have really stuck with me. Some of it, personal. Some of it, I think, church wide. But that first night, Sunday night, when I found out that I was COVID positive, I went to bed early, and to be honest, I was a bit discouraged. I mean, all of us, you as well, we're all trying to lead into something that we, never ever talked about in
Right.
seminary. And then on top of that, feeling like I'm not up to par. I'm sick, and I got this kind of sickness that's causing me to be uncertain about the future. And and honestly, talking to other leaders, other pastors across Pennsylvania, yourself, and the whole group that we gather together with has been
Yeah.
so helpful. But honestly, at that point, I was kind of feeling like everybody's leading in stride and hitting this out of the park, and I felt inadequate at best. And just kind of laying there in the midst of asking God, what's going on. I had this sense of Him saying, your problem, Dan, is you're still trying to control everything that you can control, and you're feeling like the positive outcomes are all dependent on whatever you can give your leadership to. And the reality is, I just had this sense of God saying, what you've asked for, I'm doing,
Yeah.
and you just need to let go. And I think for us as leaders, especially, you know, God following leaders, that place of control and surrender. I mean, it's an ongoing battle, and so for me, that was one of the immediate kind of, okay, this is part of the journey you have me on, God, and where do I need to let go and release grip, and where do I need to lead, and but mostly just being reminded again that what I bring to the table is not so much my leadership capacities as it is my brokenness and my dependency on God, and that one has stuck with me, and I think the other thing, for even still, but the last couple of weeks, especially since finding out I was COVID positive, I mean, there's just this kind of emotion. It's been kind of emotional, and there just be times listening to a worship song or praying or not doing anything spiritual where it's just like my heart would be gripped and it would squeeze the tears out of my eyes. And it took me a while to just kind of ponder that emotion, to say, so what in the world is that? And I didn't feel like it was fear. I didn't feel fearful. There was maybe a little bit of concern wrapped up in what was going on for Lynn and for others. But I think primarily what I realized, or what I felt like was going on, was God was saying, I'm just giving you a little taste of my heart for the world, especially for my kids. And I just had this sense that God has put us all on this worldwide Sabbath, and He's just, every time I look out over the valleys of Central PA, it's like I just see His arms open wide and just kind of wooing us back into His heart and saying, child, come home. And yeah, I think that's the part for me as I'm trying to lead people, is just to say, don't miss this opportunity. We may never have an opportunity on a global, local, neighborhood scale of so many people seeking out the heart of God. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think those are the probably the two biggest lessons right now that are sticking with me and sticking deep.
Yeah. It's great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Super, super profound. Um, I think that as somebody who's had this disease, I was wondering if there's I've heard with others who had it that it's hard for people to kind of come around you even
Yeah.
after because they think maybe you still have it, or maybe you're still contagious or whatever. Have you had people distancing more from you because they're freaked out because you had it?
Yeah, there's already been a little bit of that, even though I'm not around very many people now, still doing the
Yeah.
shelter in place kind of thing. But I've been over to the office, and there's been a couple of staff members kind of.
Yeah.
Bill Horlocker asked me a similar question, when we did the second interview, and he said, are you going to feel bad if people are kind of like staying away from you? And I said, I'm like an infamous non-hugger at Calvary. I mean,
Right.
I'm always making fun of the fact that please don't hug me.
Right.
I say to people, I'll never refuse, but I'll never initiate.
Uh-huh.
So the reality is, if people don't want to be near me, I'm probably not even going to notice it. and
Right.
there's been a few notorious huggers
Uh-huh.
at Calvary who have said, "Man, when this lifts, I'm making a beeline for you." And I just responded hashtag quarantine forever. So
Yeah,
if
right.
that's the good thing that comes out of this is,
Yeah.
I got a little bit more personal space, I'm probably okay with that.
You don't even do the Christian side hug or any of that
Uh, you
stuff? You're
know,
just
I mean, my kind of perfected deal is I'm gonna do my best to not hug you unless we're hold shaking hands, because then
right.
I got an arm in between us, and the other arm kind of goes up
There
and
you
pats
go.
the back, and
The bro hug.
yeah, the bro hug.
Yeah. Hey, I wonder, speaking of handshakes, I wonder if that's going away. Do you think
I don't know.
we're done with handshakes?
Yeah, I think it's in my mind it's a little bit too early to figure out what we're done with. We have an
Yeah,
amazing capacity to go back to normal.
that's true.
Almost too much. I'm hoping that
Yeah,
there's a number of things that don't go back to normal, but
yeah.
I don't know. If the handshake goes, we're probably not losing a ton.
I think we have a partner church in Japan. I think they might have it right with the little bow thing. I think that's
Oh
probably
yeah,
what they're that may be why the numbers are so low in Japan.
yeah.
They
But I
they
don't
don't
know.
do the
When you're
hand.
bowing, your faces
That's
are
true.
really
You
even
got the
closer
that's
together. It just
that's true.
I don't know that there's any good way to be in somebody's personal space.
Right. So I I shamelessly stole one of your phrases and have used it at Grace, and it really caught on around here. And I know you guys are big into this front yard missions thing, really kind of being the outlet of missional
Yeah,
living for every believer. That we all have a mission field, and you have said this multiple times in my presence, where you say, all the good stuff's on the other side of awkward.
yeah.
And so we've talked about that in terms of evangelism here, or whatever. What do you think? This what kind of opportunities, I would say, does this situation provide for front yard missions and that
Yeah.
whole concept of pushing through the awkward and getting to the good stuff?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the handshakes, and everybody's talking about what's going to happen to the gatherings
Right?
when the coronavirus fog lifts, and are people going to gather? Is there a lot of energy to gather or not gather? And I don't know. I think people are going to gather like they did before. Maybe more energy, maybe less. But I think for me, the thing that keeps kind of hitting me is that I think God is probably less concerned about how we gather and more concerned about how we scatter. And
Yeah.
that's probably out of anything. That's the one thing that I hope does not go back to normal. I do think there's a lot of people, not just at Calvary. I think in the church in general. I think God has been preparing for this. I think there are a lot of people who are taking that mission call right now seriously, to just go love your neighbor. You can't do anything else. You don't. There's nothing to serve at in the four walls of the church. So if you're going to serve,
Yeah.
the easiest place is to love your neighbor. Be the pastor of your front yard, and we're seeing some traction with that. I mean that's been a big thing to us for the last 4 years. And I think we're seeing some traction. A lot of it is little seeds, acts of kindness, notes. I think, in the first week, the primary story that I heard was somebody taking a note saying, "Hey, I care about you. If I can help or pray for you," stuffing the note in a roll of toilet paper and put it on somebody's front step. That's been kind of our primary mode, I think, lately. And when you talk
The
about being
toilet
on the
paper
other
thing is so confusing.
I know.
It's
But when you
just
talk about being on the other
mind-boggling.
side of awkward, in normal times, that would be the most awkward thing in the world. Now it's like, hey, we're all going
Yeah,
to do this, toilet
that's
paper on
hilarious.
the.
Right.
Um, but I do think that's happening. That people are reaching out.
Yeah,
That people are praying. I know that's happening, but
yeah,
reaching out to serve their neighbors, and that decentralized, go where you're planted kind of
yeah,
thing. And we're trying to do what we can to resource that and encourage that. But even then, there's not a ton that we can do. We can't get everybody together, and
yeah.
we're sending information out how to, 7 ways to love your neighbor in a pandemic. We're kind of we're trying to do some of that stuff, like a lot of churches are. But I do think I think that's gaining some traction. I really
That's
do. I'm
cool.
very hopeful about that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I guess I would just say we'll just close with this, Dan. But I would say in addition to that, we're not neither of us are prognosticators,
Yeah,
fortune tellers or future tellers. But in addition to that potential outcome, are there any other things that you can look at and say, I wonder if God is up to this
yeah,
as a result of all of this? I mean, how many times in history has the whole world stopped at the same time
yeah.
and been thinking about the same thing? It's like, what is God up to? I don't believe He caused this,
Yeah.
but I do think He will use it. Do you
Mhm.
have any ideas? And maybe in addition to that scattering concept
Yeah.
of like, what's God up to? What could be one of the positive results of all of
Yeah. I man, kind of like you said, I don't know the future. I think, if there's three things I see God doing, I believe with all my heart there's 10,000 more things that I
this?
just don't even have a clue. I don't see, but I can't help but keep going back to old words like revival
Mm,
and even in terms of especially right now, I'm seeing not a cascade, but more than a trickle of prodigals, doing business, coming back.
yeah,
I've been talking with a young man who, man, his life has gone in a dark direction, and in the midst of all of this, God has just grabbed him, and the journey back is not going to be easy. But that first step of turning to come back, is so important and so good. And but also, new people coming into the family. I'm starting to hear, stories of that from some of the people at Calvary. Again, not any kind of a cascade, but more than a
yeah,
trickle. And I think for the family of God, God is trying to wipe away the distractions and get the voices out of our ears that are distractions and consumption and condemning and shaming and all that kind of stuff, and fill our hearts with the voice of the Father. People who don't know Him,
mm,
um, I just, this weekend, that's kind of my closing point in the sermon is what is Jesus doing? I think He's walking every empty street and knocking on the door of every isolated heart, to draw them into the love burst of God. I feel like He's on the move, and
yeah,
I don't. I mean, I know everybody is going to go through this differently. The person who has 7 kids in their house and it feels like 22.
yeah,
And people like Lynn and I who are empty nesters and we're kind of managing our time. Everybody's going to go through it different, but I just feel like the Spirit of God is more accessible now to everybody, um, than He has been for a while.
yeah. I love it. I love it. One of my old college professors used to say, "When God gets your attention, pay attention." And
Mm,
I think
that's good.
he's gotten a lot of people's attention as
Yeah,
a result of this because he's kind of kicked down all of the you know the the stuff that people have built their
yeah,
life on that may not
yeah,
be as rock solid as they thought it was.
yeah.
All the
So true.
scaffolding that we've built to
Yeah,
make ourselves feel comfortable and in control, and kind of got the world by the tail. All of a sudden it's
yeah,
all gone, and
yeah,
I think there's a lot of people scratching their head going, okay, well, who am I? What
yeah,
is this? What have I built my life on?
yeah.
Just a great opportunity. So hey, brother,
Really
I love
true.
you. I
Love
appreciate
you too,
you.
Derek.
I just want to
I'm not going to hug you, but
yeah, no, that's
love you
good.
too.
I've already wiped down my camera just in case COVID-19 can come through many miles of uh, computer stuff. But hey, I'm glad you're feeling better. Glad that
Yeah,
you're
thanks.
recovered, and continue to pray for all the great stuff that God's doing in State College. So
Yeah,
love you, man. Thanks for taking the
love
time
you too.
today. All right.
Thanks.